Good evening. Welcome to the Lisle Area Chamber of Commerce's Mayoral Candidate Forum. We're beginning a little early to make sure that we get the questions started right at 7 o'clock. So we're just going to talk a little about our moderator and some things going on today. So thank you for being here. My name is Jill Dukas. I'm the Lisle Area Chamber Executive Director. Thank you to the Government Affairs Committee and Debbie Powalowitz, the chair. Debbie, wave. For their time in helping us prepare for the forum. A special shout out to Claudine Rummer, our office manager, and for all the preparations to make this in such an organized manner. So thank you, Claudine, as well. Our moderator tonight is Liz O'Toole, a lifelong resident of Downers Grove. Liz owned a business in Lisle and was chamber member for 8 years, and she was a board of director for 4 years. Her business was located at 1111 Burlington Avenue, which is just across the street from here. Thank you for the chamber. She was our chamber's landlord for many years. Thank you for that. So we love being over there. Liz is a bookkeeper and volunteers for many nonprofits, including the Education Foundation of Downers Grove District 58 as their board member. She's also St. Baldrick's event coordinator. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Good evening. I am here tonight to moderate the forum for the Lisle local election for mayor. I am an unbiased party, which means I cannot vote in the Lisle election. This is not a debate, this is a forum. Questions are addressed to the issues, not personalities. Our timer tonight is Deb Powalowitz, and our helper is Paula, and she will hold up and display signs, including a 30-second sign and a stop sign. We have distributed index cards and pens for you to fill out questions. If you do have a question during the forum, there are more cards up in the corner. Raise your hand and we'll pick it up and they'll bring it down to the table for me. Due to the time constraints, we may not get to all the questions, but we will try to get to all of them. And if some of them do seem to be duplicates, I might combine the questions so we're asking the same question. Please turn off all your cell phones, and there are no pictures or videotaping now that the forum has started. We do have a professional photographer here, and he will be videotaping tonight. It will be broadcasted on our YouTube channel for the Lisle Chamber at lislechamber.com, and it will also be rebroadcasted throughout the next couple weeks, and they'll notify when they'll be rebroadcasted. We do welcome our candidates, Mary Jo Mullen and Christopher Pisek. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. In the order of which the candidates will speak will be alphabetically by last name. Additionally, any questions will be alphabetically by last name. Each candidate will get 2 minutes for their opening statements. Each candidate will get 2 minutes per question to answer. If a candidate is referred to within a response, they will get a 1-minute rebuttal. And then at the end, each candidate will have 2 minutes for closing statements. Any questions? Okay, we are good to go. Give me just a minute and we'll start questions. Oh. 7? Okay. Wait till 7 or go ahead and start? We're 5 minutes till. 4.5 minutes. Sorry. 4.5. Go ahead and start. Okay, nope, that's fine. I didn't want anybody to walk in and say, you started already. Okay. We will go ahead and start, and this question will start with candidate Mullen.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Will we start with opening comments?
Oh, I'm so sorry. She handed me the question, and I went right into it.
Got so excited.
Candidate Mullen, your opening statement, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much to the Chamber for hosting this and for everyone for being here and your interest and involvement in municipal elections. My name is Mary Jo Mullen, and I'm here tonight to ask for your vote for mayor. I worked here in Lisle from 1998 to 2003 as a civil engineer at a local firm, and I remember thinking then how Lisle, especially our downtown, seemed like it was on the verge of change, like it was about to have something big happen. There was so much opportunity here, but yet we didn't have the same kind of downtown that our neighboring communities have. I left that job and went to work for FEMA for 10 years in the flood insurance program. As my time progressed as a public servant in FEMA, 5 of those years ended up being spent in Washington, D.C., working on national level public policy to help make communities safer and more resilient. We returned from working in D.C. in 2012 and settled here in Lisle because I liked the small town, close-knit community that it was, and a good friend of mine from high school actually told me about how much opportunity her kids had in this school system. It sounded ideal for our young family. I was surprised, though, when we returned that not much had changed downtown, and a lot of the same struggles still seemed to be there. As I became more involved in politics, being elected to Lisle Township Supervisor in 2017, I started to see and hear the challenges from developers in Lisle. As a local business owner here now, I hear the challenges from my customers every day. And now as a trustee in the village, I have the chance to work on making that change I want to see, but we still hit obstruction after obstruction after obstruction. Lisle needs true leadership from a mayor, someone with a vision for the greatness that is to come and skills to make it happen, someone that will stand up for what is right, treat business owners respectfully, and collaborate with other local governments to get more done, someone who will be an ambassador for Lisle with the development community. Tonight, I intend to show you that I am that someone that can move Lisle forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Mullen. Candidate Pisek.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your interest. My name is Chris Pisak. I've served as the mayor of the Village of Lisle for the past 8 years, starting 8 years ago with a campaign called Prosperity for Lisle, setting out to achieve a prosperous future for Lisle. We planned our work and worked our plan, and it continues to be more than just a motto. Now, by putting Lisle first, the prosperous results are evident. Working towards a goal of realizing a lower cost of living within Lisle's border than outside of it, Lisle First has achieved the following. We've frozen property taxes for 8 straight years, working towards a goal of full property tax abatement. We paid off a $6 million loan in cash, doubled our general fund, realized surplus revenue to budget each of those 8 years, grown sales tax revenue as a comparison, the 1% base compared to our neighbors. We've grown that sales tax revenue at a higher rate than all of our surrounding communities by a factor of up to 5 times. We've doubled our sales tax revenue while maintaining the same sales tax rate. We've negated reverse amortization on the annual police pension fund contributions and maintained the 5th highest funded police pension funding ratio in the western suburbs and much of Illinois by a large margin. We've rewritten our zoning code for the first time in Lisle's history. We've updated our outdated restrictive building codes and maintained annual updates. By and large, those were the 2 complaints from developers, were outdated building codes, outdated zoning codes. Reaching back 30 or more years, the zoning code hadn't been rewritten for 50 years. We've updated our comprehensive land use plan, developed an accelerated development time frame where a highly motivated developer, such as Rush Cancer Center, could receive their entitlements within 6 weeks of application. We maintained a record rate of quality development. I'll continue at a later opportunity. Thank you all.
Thank you. And now to the first question. This would be to Candidate Mullen first. Do you support Lisle becoming a home rule community? If so, how would you achieve it, through organic growth, annexation, or something else?
So I am in support of Lisle becoming home rule as it happens organically. I wouldn't want to push it forward through a referendum or anything like that. I think that the population limits exist to make sure you're ready for it. I do think that with home rule, we get a lot more opportunity to provide services, to fund specific things, and I think that it also really allows us to do more that we need to do to make Lisle the community that we want to see it be. It allows us to also change our tax rates and introduce different tax rates that would not necessarily be paid by Lisle residents. As we can attract people from outside of Lisle and we continue to grow, those are the areas that we can also benefit from, having our things like sales tax and different taxes like that, paid for by people external to Lisle, lessening the tax burden on Lisle residents and businesses.
Thank you. Mr. Pisek.
Thank you. So, home rule.
Sorry, she doesn't have the timer. My apologies. There we go.
Home rule is a double-edged sword. It's been compared to a teenager getting their first credit card. If you're not responsible with home rule, it can be very, very hazardous. It requires a lot of discipline in order to implement correctly. Now, interesting fact: Lisle has been a home rule community in the past. This dates back to about 1970. It was voted in by referendum. It can always be voted in by referendum. If the residents choose to be home rule, they have the right to put it on a referendum and vote it in. They voted it in the 70s. Population at that time was about 7,000 people. Unfortunately, right after that, a utility tax was paid. A non-home rule utility tax was passed. That caused an uproar, and the very following election, it was repealed back out for non-home rule. So it's not impossible. It can be done. But what is paramount in home rule is a responsible government, and I believe that I've set the example. I don't need home rule for taxation. We have adequate taxation and sales tax revenue. We need to reduce taxation. By the way, sales tax revenue is paid approximately 80% by people outside of our borders. So sales tax revenue is a great opportunity to grow and relieve our reliance on property tax. But it takes a disciplined person, and over the last 8 years, I have demonstrated that.
Okay, second question, Candidate Mullen. In regard to an adopted strategic plan in 2022, do you agree with the recommendations, or would you propose an alternative approach?
So strategic plans are that. They're plans, and they're meant to evolve and grow. I am a facilitator and trained specifically in strategic planning, and I do believe that you have to refresh them periodically. Now, our current strategic plan, I very much believe in and believe we should keep pushing forward on the elements we discovered that we all could agree on and come together on. But I think we also need to pick it up as the term expires of the strategic plan and do another workshop and involve the community, get resident feedback, business feedback, understand the current landscape, and then you move forward into another planning process and develop a brand new 5-year plan. I think we continue to execute on what we have, but then we go through another cycle of planning. Plans are great. They don't mean anything unless you actually act on them. And I'm really proud that our staff does take them seriously and has been performing well against the plan. And as we've had the current plan in place, they've also kind of adjusted how they present things to the board in terms of this is how it fits in with the plan. This is how we are making Lisle more safe, more welcoming, things like that. So I think that it'll be picked up again when it's time. We go through another really collaborative process, because I think that what we did last time was a facilitated full board process, including staff. And I think that was really important to come up with the goals and objectives that we have today. So I would do the same essential process when it's time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Candidate Pisek.
Thank you. But just as a reminder, I think there was a rule that the responses would alternate between candidates. I believe it's Rule 9.
My apologies, I wasn't given that rule. So
but
I
I
will
will
start switching back and forth.
Yes.
Thank you.
So strategic planning is, I believe, on a 3-year cycle. We've done that each 3 years to involve new members of the board on a cyclical basis that doesn't tie into a 2-year cycle nor a 4-year cycle. So it gives everybody an opportunity within their elected portion of serving time to be on one of those planning cycles. We've done that every year. It's nothing new. The results are great. They're a great way to gauge our performance, staff's performance, and they really set out a plan for staff to follow. If we tweak it too often, we can't fulfill what we set out to fulfill. So I think a three-year cycle is adequate for it and very effective.
Thank you. So this will go to candidate Pisak first. My apologies again.
Thank you.
Do you feel tax increment financing, or TIF, is the best economic incentive option for Lisle? Or are there other alternatives that you would rather see, and why?
There's no one financing option that's an end-all be-all. We have tools in our toolbox, is what we like to say. That's one tool in the toolbox. It doesn't solve every problem, but we have to look at the opportunities and what TIF financing can do. Quite often, TIF financing sets a poor target. There are TIFs currently in the village that are underperforming TIFs, and we end up distributing surplus funds back to other taxing bodies because they didn't achieve what they were intended to achieve. I think it's imperative that there are project-based TIFs, there are business district-based TIFs, there are redevelopment-based TIFs, and there's sales tax sharing opportunities. There's many tools that we have in our toolbox. We just have to find the right one for the right opportunity. We have to work with developers, identify those developments, but if we put the incentive out there ahead of time, it tends to bring in not what we were looking for. So, thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Mullen.
So I agree that the TIF is one tool in our toolbox, and things like sales tax sharing are feasible when it's not too large of a development. One of the things we just went through is identifying a project area for study for a potential TIF, and in that case, along 53, it's not feasible to have a sales tax sharing there. So TIF is our best option to at least evaluate what the feasibility of having it is. I would say actually that when we have to give money back to other governing bodies, that's the TIF working the way it's supposed to. It's an incentive, and if you don't meet your incentives and your goals, then you are, in return, are not going to be funded at the level that we had originally agreed upon. That's how incentives work. I think the TIF itself is a good incentive when you have areas that are blighted, and I think the Family Square area is a great example of that. I think Loch Former is a great example of that. I think there are areas that are very difficult for us to redevelop right now, whether they have environmental concerns or just have a long history of sitting vacant. I think the TIF as an incentive is really an important tool to attract developers, to show that we're in this together and to be a partner with the developer rather than an adversary, which is frequently what happens today.
Thank you. Okay, this question would be then for candidate Mullen. First, what do you think should be done with the remaining LEDD, Lisle Economic Development Department, money that is from the Village Hotel Motel tax?
So the Lisle Economic Development Partnership, LEDP.
I didn't know, that's what they said.
It's all good. There is money from the village that remains in LEDP's coffers. I believe that money should be returned to the village. It is not, we have broke away from LEDP because of a lack of ability to do the work of the village. There was constant conflict, and there was a lot of, frankly, embarrassing activity as a result of the formation of LEDP. I believe there's about 30 to 40,000 that was given from the village that remains in the bank account for LADP. I would really like to see that returned. I would like to see us be able to use that for the village interests, because we no longer have an agreement with LADP on behalf of the village. Thanks.
Thank you.
So I am the person that actually tried to withhold payment to the LEDP over transparency issues. The village board overrode my commentary and forcibly paid the LEDP funds that I asked to withhold. Current board members on the village board now served on the LEDP board at the time. While those remaining funds remained in the LEDP's coffers and resigned before they did anything with that money. They left it in the LEDP. The LEDP is a private, separate organization that was funded by the village for work that they had done in the past. That work was done, it was consummated. That is water over the dam. But since we're talking about public funds going to a separate entity doing work for the village, the real question is, what happened to the $400,000 that was at the LCVB when they disbanded, and how did it get distributed? That's the money that should be chased after. And the village board spent $40,000 to fight a transparency lawsuit and lost at the PAC office over the LEDP. The same transparency that I was fighting for. So the LEDP continues to do good work. It sponsors special events. It sponsors the cruise nights. It helps with the cars and coffee. It raises private funds for additional work. So there is a balance there, but it comes from private donations. Everything else was part of a contractual agreement with the village. The village can't cut ties and go, now we changed our mind. That's how business works. So, but yeah, I'd be interested in finding out from the LCVB where the $400,000 went.
Thank you. Next question for candidate Pasek first. How will you ensure the safety and security of Lisle residents? And are you in favor of hiring a social worker to augment what our officers currently provide?
We have kept the village of Lisle the safest community in the Chicagoland area. We've actually moved businesses from Chicago into Lisle because it's the safest community around. I've said for a long time that we don't have a mental health problem. We have a spiritual health problem. If we return to the core basics, we'd resolve a lot of our issues. I have worked with local churches who are interested in creating a support group, a spiritual support group, where officers could have literature and referrals to faith-based organizations. It may not fit everybody's first look, but Science of Spirituality is willing to offer meditation classes and just going and reflecting for a period of time when people are stressed. Now, that said, the topic of a social worker, there are other taxing bodies that are more relevant to social work. We collect the mental health tax at the township. That is probably the appropriate place for a social worker. Police are police. They're sworn police. They have a function, but they need to call for support. We have a library that operates longer hours and is a respite center, a warming shelter, a cooling shelter, is open longer hours. There are many libraries that hire social workers because they're the center of information for a community. So I think that our police do a stellar job. They've kept the community safe. We've kept the community safe all throughout COVID, all throughout all the turbulence that we've had, the uprisings within the country. We've kept the community safe. We've had special events without incident. We continue to do good work in Lisle.
Thank you. Candidate Mullen.
There's a lot to unpack right here. First, I want to say that one of the tactics that's often used in politics is called deflection. When you transfer from one topic to another and try to make the issue about that, you're deflecting from the actual issue. So let's talk about social workers and police. I believe our police do an excellent job, but I think we overburden them by expecting them to do everything under the sun. Their job is public safety, not mental health wellness, and they are put in situations every day where they walk into somebody having a breakdown, a marital dispute, a domestic dispute of any kind, and there's always the need to rely on mental health services. When I was supervisor at the township, we started the Suicide Prevention Coalition for Youth, and we had great participation from Lisle Police, as well as a lot of other places, including our schools. And one of the big things was our police across the board need supportive services themselves, as well as supportive services to offer to people in crisis. Now, the mayor mentioned the mental health board. I actually tried to get the mental health board passed when I was supervisor, and it ultimately got passed by referendum. That money for the mental health board is actually exactly what we can use to hire a social worker for the police department. This happens in Bloomingdale Township currently with their mental health board. They offer grants that fund social workers and supportive services for the police department. So they have somebody they can always call upon who can help either in the situation or be referred to. So absolutely, I do think we need a social worker on staff. I also think that we have the ability to get it funded through the mental health board. So there'll be no increase in cost from the village side. Thanks.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with candidate Mullen. What would be your top priorities for village spending and why?
So top priorities across the board, and whether this is direct spending or a focus of staff resources, is economic development and doing what we need to do to attract developers, to build relationships with developers, and ensure that people know that we are here to do business in Lisle, not fight them, not obstruct them, not be rude to them. I think that has to be number one, because part of why we are able to keep our tax base low currently is we just kind of hold everything steady. But we're not seeing the increase. While sales tax may play a very small role in it, we aren't seeing our overall assessed values increase at the rate that other neighboring towns do. Our commercial EAV has not kept up with everyone else in our surrounding area. And if our commercial EAV was at the same place, we'd probably be saving taxpayers on their property taxes about $250 a month conservatively, or a year conservatively. So we need to have a strong focus on economic development. Beyond that, I think safety is one of the most important things, and I mean that in a very broad context. Safety in terms of our policing, safety in terms of our resilience from any kind of disaster, whether it be economic crash to natural disaster and flooding. Any of those things are really important for us to have a focus on to keep our whole community safe. And then I would say my third priority would really be focused around, there's so many, trying to bring together the community in a better manner. So like I said in the beginning, I really think that a close-knit community is what I craved when I became here, and I miss things like the eyes of the sky. So I'd like to see us try and find ways that we can bring the whole community together, support events, and bring that forward.
Thank you. Candidate Pisak.
Thank you. So the number one priority that is coming up quickly for us will be when the DuPage County Highway Department finishes the Warrenville Road Bridge reconstruction, will be the North Connector Trail connecting downtown Lisle, particularly the metro station, to the Arboretum and beyond. It will require a lot of funding, a lot of planning, a lot of resources to make that a reality once we're given that passageway beneath the Warrenville Road Bridge. It's a huge opportunity, huge development opportunity. It has the potential to give us our own Riverwalk like Naperville has, if we do the right thing with it. It will require a lot of funding, a lot of planning, a lot of resources to make that a reality once we're given that passageway beneath the Warrenville Road Bridge. It's a huge opportunity, huge development opportunity. It has the potential to give us our own Riverwalk like Naperville has, if we do the right thing with it. Glen Ellen, Lombard, they want to reach downtown Lisle. Our residents in Woodridge, want to come through Lisle, reach Glen Ellen, Lombard. It will be a reality in the next couple of years. We have to keep our eyes on that and keep that funded. We have to continue funding buyouts in the floodplain. It's been a terrific program that people have found tremendous need for. It's succeeded every year, spent the entire budget each year on buying up properties. And we need to continue to do stormwater projects. We've done more stormwater capital improvement projects in the last 2 or 3 years than we have in our history. We will have the Path to the Park District coming online in the next couple weeks. We have our first ever bike ped plan developed, our first ever stormwater plan. All those capital projects all will need funding, and they will all be a reality.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll start with candidate Pisek this time. What alternative sources of revenue would you pursue, like video gambling, recreational cannabis, et cetera, for more revenue for the Village of Lisle?
I don't believe we need those resources. We don't need those additional revenues. It's my firm belief that as a family community, family-based community, you can't buy your reputation back once you've gone into the sin taxes. State of Illinois is actually working on passing a bill to make prostitution legal. Do we want any of those things to raise money in the Village of Lisle? We have the lowest sales tax rate in the Village of Lisle, and discounting titled vehicle sales, which do not qualify for additional home rule or non-home rule sales taxes, an additional 1% sales tax would bring another $4 million into the village budget. It would almost eliminate property taxes a la Oak Brook. It could pay down the police pension fund shortfall in 4 to 5 years with a 1% sales tax increment raise. But it can only be accomplished through referendum. But there's not enough money to be made in cannabis, not enough money to be made in gaming. If you look at the communities, the largest DuPage County gaming operation is the mobile station at Route 53 and Butterfield Road. Gas stations, parlors that do gaming only and serve sandwiches and a cold beer, they're the ones that make the majority of the money. And as a non-home rule community, we have no control over them if we opt in on them. So it's not viable in Lisle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Mullen.
So I personally would not favor video gambling, but I understand that it is not just a tax source, but it's something that is helpful to businesses. So there is interest in the business community for it. So I would be open to having a listening session about it and understanding where businesses are coming from and why people are looking for it, and making decisions further down the road, at least having restrictions if we were to go down that path of who can and can't have gambling. I am supportive of recreational cannabis dispensary in Lisle. I think that there is absolutely money in it. I am looking at several people right now who live in Naperville, and Naperville has seen significant tax revenue from this. I recall a meeting leading into the opt-in, opt-out debate within Naperville, in which the former mayor of Naperville was quite excited about the prospect of having additional dispensaries for recreational use. There absolutely is money to be had, and I think it's great to say that we've been holding our levy steady, but there comes a point where we can't move forward without additional tax revenue or some revenue source. So having an opportunity like recreational cannabis allows us to do more without putting any burden on our residents and our businesses. It's also proven out not to be the terrifyingly scary thing that everyone was really afraid of in the beginning. It's proven out to have been a successful business for a lot of people and provided a good deal of revenue for the communities that have dispensaries.
Thank you. This one would be for candidate Mullen first. What would you change to improve and attract retail and commercial developers to Lisle? Explain what you would do specifically.
So I think a lot of it starts with, as I said in the very beginning, being an ambassador. Being as the face of Lisle, you have to treat people respectfully. When a business owner appears before us, you have to treat them well, and you have to be able to collaborate and work with everybody. I think that's step one, is really changing our image with businesses. I think we did a great thing when we ended our agreement with LEDP in hiring an economic development director. And the work that he does is really useful, and I would like to see him even, or if it requires an additional person, visiting businesses and getting real quality data from them, having surveys, understanding what are the challenges today, what do we need to do to fix them, what are the things that work really well for you as a business owner in Lisle, what are the things that are really challenging. And I think from there we can develop more of a strategic plan for retaining our businesses as well as attracting new ones by building upon the strengths we have. It's kind of the foundation whenever you're working with process improvement and continual improvement, like what's working well, how do we hold on to that and how do we do better, and then how do we go forward from there. I'm a black belt in Lean Six Sigma, which is all about process and continual improvement, and I think using those foundations are what's really important. I also think we start building relationships with potential retailers who have interest and who fit our model well. We have a contract ongoing currently where we have a consultant who is evaluating a variety of retail businesses and which companies fit or have interest in towns like Lisle. So then I think we need to really actively pursue those businesses, make a lot of relationships within them to entice them into opening businesses here.
Thank you.
1 second. Sorry.
You good? Okay, candidate Pisak.
Thank you. So the developers that I've had conversations with tell me one main point that they take issue with the Village of Lisle, and that is that over 25 to 30 years ago, they were denied the opportunity to bring in national clients. They were told Lisle doesn't want a Starbucks, Lisle doesn't want a national brand, Lisle doesn't want this, Lisle doesn't want that, and they've vowed to never do business in the Village of Lisle. Then, 25 years ago, the Meyer incident occurred, where a viable store bought property in the Village of Lisle, and because of a process error, and I've made it a point, no process errors on my watch, because of a process error, the entire deal went to the Illinois Supreme Court and was struck down, and Meyer was not allowed to buy property in the Village of Lisle. It actually got to the extent where that then village board passed an ordinance saying Meyer is not welcome in Lisle. That is the signal that developers have been getting for years. Now, to counter that, we've created an environment that's friendly to developers and that reserves development opportunities for sales tax producing businesses. We hired a consultant called BDI 20 years ago that suggested that we take the Burke automobile properties, which by the way Costco was looking at those properties at one time. That consultant suggested we take those automobile properties and tear them down and put residential housing on them. We reserved it for the right use, for the right purpose, and now we are getting vehicle sales on those properties again because we waited for the right opportunity, and it reflects in our sales tax revenues. we have to always be on the lookout for every sales tax opportunity that we can.
Thank you. Candidate Pisek will set the next question. What is your vision for the future development at the corner of Main and Ogden? What specific steps would you take to achieve this vision?
Sure. So the first thing I think we have to look at is that area is more than just the corner of Main and Ogden. That area comprises approximately about 9 acres in a TIF district, which by definition was defined as blighted. Now, it wasn't blighted the day that it was declared blighted as it is today. It became more blighted because the owner closed all the stores, cut all the leases, kicked out all the businesses, and then appealed his property taxes and said, I have an empty building now, I want to pay lower property taxes. The TIF district, without vision, created a situation that made downtown worse. Now, by definition, in the TIF district, blighted property, improperly platted, not efficiently platted properties, too small properties. The solution to downtown Lisle, we only have one chance to do this. Whatever we build there is going to be there for the next 100 years. And if we have 9 adjacent acres and a couple acres to the east, a firehouse, is to combine all that property into a cohesive development that's a lifestyle center, that Ace Hardware is interested in that, in being present on that property. We need a grocery store option. For years, residents, a survey that we put out, more grocery options, and we're not filling that need. Everybody has to leave town for those grocery options. So the downtown area, the last developer that we brought in to take a look at the opportunity to redevelop that property simply stated in 6 weeks, ran their numbers and said there's not enough room on that corner property to put up a 200-unit apartment building with adequate parking, with retail, with everything else. 6 weeks it took them, not 6 years, 6 weeks. And the reason is because the construction type changes, the building grows too tall, and it's perpetuating chase up building a bigger building.
Okay. Thank you. I forgot where I am. Oh. Candidate Mullen, sorry.
So my vision for Maine and Ogden is one that I plan to actually achieve. It's been 8 years of that blighted land being there, and I've heard since before I was sworn in at a coffee with the mayor that that was his vision. Yet nothing has ever moved forward, nothing has ever been proposed, nothing has ever really happened. I believe that the previously proposed development of a mixed-use facility with a combination of either condos or rentals and retail is the right thing. It's what's in our downtown master plan currently. It's what other downtown areas in our surrounding neighbor communities have, and it's very successful. We have a lot of restaurants, they have a lot of stores and shops, and I think what's important, and something that one of my business coaches talked about in the past with me, is that we have to actually define ourselves as Lisle. You can be niche for our downtown to be successful. You want to be an inch wide and a mile deep. So if we had a specific vision, and I think this is something done collaboratively with the public, of we're a very boutique-oriented or maker-oriented community, then we work on attracting those specific types of businesses along with other types of businesses, but a focus on them so that we're attracting people to Lisle as a destination with a specific purpose. So I do think mixed use with retail is the right thing there. I think it's about finding the right developer. I think that it's going to take a little bit of time potentially too, because while we were being vetoed and overruled constantly around Flaherty and Collins, we also were seeing our economy go down and down and down, and financing became very difficult and still is difficult for anything that's retail. So it's going to be something that's hard to manage, but we can do it.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So, Candidate Pisek, if you'd like to do a 1-minute rebuttal, it would be allowed because she did refer to you in her beginning remarks.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. I did veto the Flaherty and Collins proposal because it was rushed at the last minute. It wasn't well thought out. It was supported twice when the TIF should have been closed. That 7-year limit should have hit. We should have closed the TIF. We should have reset the clock and created a new TIF. That would have been the right way to do it. We can't decide which developer comes in on private property. There's a private property owner, and there's a developer that holds rights on that property. Rights were held on that property for 8 years by one developer. That's the only person that can propose anything on that property. Unless the village controls that property, we don't have the ability to seek other options. Currently, the owner of the property is seeking appraisals on the property to market it, but it's 8 years too late. It should have been sold years ago.
Thank you. Just a reminder to the audience, if there are any further questions, if you would please fill out the cards and raise your hand, and we'll pick up the questions for you. Thank you.
Chris? They're coming to grab them, and then they'll be brought down. Okay? Okay.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, next question, we would start with candidate Mullen. What steps will you take to involve residents and businesses in decision-making pertaining to the new hardscapes, sidewalks, and streets along Main Street?
That's a great question. So there is an ongoing plan in the works already for the streetscape, but I do think public involvement and public engagement is really important. I don't think we can always rely on people showing up to public comment at a board meeting, because not everyone is paying attention to what board meeting has what agenda and when they're happening. So I think having an advertised public event that's facilitated is always something that is really useful. When I was at the township, we had a moldy old building the assessor was in. And one of the things that we did a long-term public engagement process where we brought in, and we actually had, in preparing for it, talked to Lisle 202 about their Vision 202 process and tried to use some of their best practices along with what I knew about facilitating. And we had a series of meetings laying out our options, discussing everything in detail with the public, and then put out a survey to everyone who attended that they had a variety of ways that they could return it to us and engage with us to let us know what their favored option was, and then what they also saw further down the road happening. So ultimately, what ended up happening is the public wanted us to rent an office facility and look at buying it in the future if the market was beneficial. That actually ended up happening. Just before I finished my term, we ended up renting a building adjacent to the township where the assessor still has his office along with the clerk. Recently they were able to purchase the building when everything kind of worked out right with the building owner. So everything that has happened was because of a long, engaged public process.
Thank you. Candidate Pisek.
So the downtown streetscape, as well as many of the downtown businesses, have been incentivized to maintain a Frank Lloyd Wright type architecture. That has gone by the wayside. There was significant, the cost of downtown Lisle improvements was on the order of $20 million for the streetscape, for storefronts, for Prairie Walk Pond improvements, for stormwater storage, and realigning Main Street to only one lane in each direction from a 4-lane road, two lanes in each direction. $20 million to have what we have today. We did do a very thorough study by a Lisle engineer with a plan to reconstruct and refurbish the current design of the downtown streetscape. That ended up being on the order of $12 or $13 million to redo it all. It was decided by the current board to replace existing finishes with just gray concrete and asphalt. So that has been put into motion already. I wish we would have done more. I wish we could have done more, but that ship has sailed.
Thank you. That's no problem. This question would be, start with candidate Pisek. How would you address flooding issues and stormwater management in the village?
Well, number one, we follow FEMA and DuPage County regulations. So it's very difficult to manage stormwater. We had an engineer report to us that it would take a hole in the ground the size of the Elmhurst Quarry to store all of Lisle's stormwater. I think what we have to do is we have to mitigate residential properties in the in the floodplain, and then look at opportunities. Great opportunity, or great example is the Chicagoland Auto Group, Honda and Volvo of Lisle, that are looking at building a new building in the floodplain, what's considered now floodplain. It's entered in the floodplain, but they're working on mitigating the floodplain, building a proper building on that property, and not housing people on it, but having a business on it that takes the appropriate risks. But it is doable. Seven Bridges is built on floodplain. Seven Bridges could have been in Lisle. Lisle, at the time that Seven Bridges was being built, Lisle told them, we don't want your development in Lisle. So they've moved down the road to where they're at currently now. There are options for the floodplain, but we have to protect residents there. The best way is by sharing knowledge, having them understand the risks, and having a buyout program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Mullen, please.
So this is where I get to completely nerd out with you guys. My background is civil engineering and stormwater management and floodplain mitigation. This is what I've done for most of my career until I turned into a baker. But I spent 10 years in FEMA working on floodplain mitigation and identifying flood hazards, helping people understand what their risk was, and identifying opportunities for mitigation with them. There are a variety of grant programs in place currently, assuming those grant programs continue forward, that we can leverage to help buy out homes, to help mitigate and otherwise harden our floodplains. So stormwater and floodplain are two very different things. Stormwater relief is about detention and keeping the stormwater that runs over your property from hitting the river too fast. It's about trying to hold it back and have a gentle release. Floodplain is when the river completely overflows and just takes off away from its banks and enters people's homes, properties. And the main thing is that you need to do is protect loss of life and property. So what's most important is making sure we have a good warning system in place. We are able to identify when the flood is coming and keep people out of harm's way. We also have to mitigate homes. The buyout program is something that I was strongly in favor of from the beginning, and I think it's a really important step for us to ensure that anybody who would like their home bought out, and I think it needs improvement as well, can move themselves to a safer, higher ground. I also think that in addition to the buyout program, we can help people file for grants and help obtain grants as a community to help people retrofit their buildings and structures who don't want to leave their building, who don't want to leave their home, but want a way to maybe make it safer, to elevate it, to fill in the basement, to move utilities and do things that make them more resilient.
Thank you. The next question will be for candidate Mullen to begin. What is your stance on affordable housing, and how do you support a plan to address housing affordability in Lisle?
When people talk about affordable housing, I feel like there's always a shudder that runs down people's backs, like this is a really scary thing. Affordable housing is necessary, And it's something that we should make sure that people who live in Lisle, who are aging out of maybe the home that they live in currently, have a place to go that they can live in affordably. That we have younger people who are just entering the workforce, who have a place that they can afford. That young families, that maybe people who have been through domestic violence and are escaping a situation, have somewhere they can go that they can afford. Affordable housing doesn't mean, oh, now we're going to have a really scary, like terrible area of our community. Affordable housing means we are open to having everybody live here, regardless of your economic status. So I think that when we have new apartments, new condos, anything like that, I think even by law, we have to have a section of that, a portion of it that is affordable. Now, you look at our apartments downtown that are very filled, but they're very expensive. There should be an entry point that people can come into to Lisle and live here and grow with us. Come in as a young person, be able to afford an apartment, start your family here, keep growing with as your family, as your situation grows. And I think affordable housing is one of the few ways that you can do that. Now, people get scared about it, but it doesn't mean anything bad. It just means that we're allowing people a chance to have a home in a beautiful village like ours and to have a chance at a better life for them and their families.
Thank you. Candidate Pisek.
Thank you. One of the things that makes Lisle one of the best places to live in Illinois, one of the top 10 places, is the fact that you can rent a residence, whether it's an apartment to a house, ranging from $500 a month to $1 million to $1 million home. But you can rent an apartment in Lisle for $500 to $600. Lisle has some of the most affordable housing anywhere in the western suburbs and all of DuPage County. We may not look at it every day, we may not see it outright, but just to the north of Village Hall here, there are apartments to the west even that are adequately furnished, that are welcoming homes to people, but they do run the gamut of top to bottom of availability for everybody. Now, whether there's an available one to rent, they're going to rent right away. It may be more challenging, but Lisle is already over 50% rental. And the question is, how far are we willing to go in rental? Because if the market turns, rental is the first one that takes the hit. And at this point right now, rental is poised to take a downturn. There's 400,000 people leaving Illinois, repatriating. So rental is projected to take a big hit pretty soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
This actually ties in with that question.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. To Candidate Pisek, to start. Do you see any impediments to real estate and economic development in the Village of Lisle? And if so, how would you address them?
I think there's 3 impediments to development in Lisle. The first and the most complicated is that we do have an awful lot of floodplain. And a lot of times owners of residences and even commercial properties don't realize the ramifications of starting work in a floodplain and violating floodplain regulation. That is number one. Number 2, we do attract a lot of do-it-yourselfers. I'm a do-it-yourselfer. I built my own home. It was my master's thesis, basically. I generaled the entire build. It is eye-opening. It can be done, and we have a lot of people that do that in Lisle. It puts it's a different type of operation than staff is accustomed to, but it takes a lot of effort to walk people through all that. I think that we have a lot of opportunistic investors that buy up properties. We had entitlements granted for a car wash The entitlements were granted for the car wash, not for the person that applied for them, but they wanted to be able to build a car wash and then market that property to investors that wanted a car wash. Now, that lapsed, and luckily we added that into our zoning code that entitlements don't last forever. If you don't build something within a year, your entitlement goes away so that other developments have an opportunity. But there's a lot of property held in Lisle, very closely held by people, waiting for an imaginary jackpot of money that could come their way. And that is a huge impediment to development. We don't take private property away from people. We can create a TIF district for underutilized properties, and therefore the TIF funds then incentivize development, but very difficult to change the mind of an unmotivated developer or owner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Mullen.
So I also will focus on 3 items that I think are impediments to economic development. The first is relationships. I don't think we have built strong relationships with potential developers or those who wish to come into our community. I think we tend instead to cause drama with them. Just in the last board meeting, a developer was asking for an extension on a time frame, and it was suggested that the most draft preliminary plans that they had put forward looked like a tenement by someone sitting up here. How do you rectify calling someone a slumlord, essentially, to when they're trying to work with us and develop a property? We need to be cooperative, we need to be respectful, and we need to build relationships with developers. We don't let them run us over, we don't do their bidding, but we have to be able to build relationships. The second is process challenges. I think a lot of the work that staff has done has been great in modernizing our codes, but that was really hitting the big things. And now the next step is, what are our process challenges? A lot of people that I've talked to, open businesses, have struggled with understanding what they had to do, what was their responsibility versus a landlord responsibility versus how do I move forward in this, and then they didn't find out about some of it until they were going through the inspection process. So I think there's some things we can do to pull people up front and make them more knowledgeable early in the process that will help them go through the regulatory process more quickly. And then the last item is really bad experiences make their way around. I don't know about the 25 years ago thing, but I do know that when we were buying the current assessor's office, or leasing the current assessor's office, that person struggled to get straight answers about what he had to do and had to fight with planning and zoning to get really straightforward variances along Ogden Avenue. And he tells everybody how hard it was.
Thank you. Candidate Pisek, you do have a 1-minute rebuttal if you choose.
I didn't say his name.
You referred to him sitting next to you?
I said somebody up here on the board.
Ladies, consensus?
It sounded like someone sitting next to
We
I will avoid further embarrassment to the candidate up here, and I'll waive the minute.
Excuse me, why do you do that? You are so insulting and rude and disrespectful.
Let's go to the next question. It would be for candidate Mullen. What steps will you take to address opioid abuse and other substance-related issues impacting Lisle residents?
So I think a lot of things go hand in hand with opioid abuse. The first is, I think, being collaborative with higher level government bodies that are pursuing legal action against drug companies, because a lot of people end up addicted who started out on prescription, and it goes south from there. I also think that there is a lot of hand in hand with mental health struggles and drug abuse, and trying to collaborate with the mental health board and identify services that we can get grants from the mental health board for that to address specifically mental health will start to also help. I also think that there is a program that I'd really like to learn more about that the Village of Elk Grove has been going through, and I'm actually meeting with the Village of Elk Grove where I grew up, where they are, if somebody comes forward and asks for help, they will help get them into a facility. and get them treatment if somebody wants that. And I think it's a really unique way of saying, hey, we're here for you as a community. I don't know if it's something that we can do, but it's something I'd like to explore. And I think there's an intergovernmental approach here too, that all of us in local government see different things, have experiences with different people, and have the ability to identify people who need help. And a lot of times just saying something and coming forward and saying, hey, do you need something? Can I help you in some way? Goes really, really far. A friend of mine told a story of, she's on the Metro Safety Board, and that's not quite the right name of it, but a conductor noticed somebody standing outside of a train stop over and over and over for days and days, and he finally said, hey, can I help you in some way? And the person looked at him and said, I was just trying to get the courage to throw myself in front of the train. And because he just spoke up, he saved the guy's life.
Thank you. Candidate Pisak.
Thank you. I've unfortunately lost several good friends, neighbors, mentors to opioid addiction and eventual abuse. It is a very, very tragic, very serious problem. It's a problem that we won't address until we actually look at the root cause of it. One of the largest, quickest things that we could do to put a big dent in any drug abuse is stop the advertising of medications and pharmaceuticals on TVs, to our families, to our children, to anybody who is encouraged to go seek advice on medicine that may not even be targeted for them. But the public relations campaigns are absolutely astounding, and the amount of dollars spent to that effort is creating this problem from the very beginning. Take care of that, and other solutions will follow. Secondly, eliminate any hold drug manufacturers accountable. Do not allow them to have any immunity for any of the drugs they produce. And lastly, we need to control our borders. We need to stop the infiltration of fentanyl and any other illicit drugs that are manufactured outside our borders, within our borders. There's ways to solve this. It's just there's too much money to be made in everybody involved. And as we're starting to find out, we will be shocked very shortly here on whose hands are in all this. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, Candidate Pisak to start. If elected, what are your top 3 specific goals for the next 4 years?
Top goals are, as we see these turbulent times, I've managed through COVID. I have worked with other mayors that have never seen anything comparable to the COVID campaign that we all went through. Keeping the community safe, regardless of what it is. We live in unprecedented times. We live in turbulent times with a lot of changes coming up, and it's going to take somebody with the understanding of where we're going, what's going to happen, to get us through this all. There are conversations going on at the national level of getting rid of income tax, of eliminating, of less reliance on property taxes. There are huge, huge, huge potentials for change in our world. And it's a long time coming in some of these, but we need to be prepared for that. Our financial system is going to reset. Things are going to, the world we're living in, we already can't recognize it from 5-6 years ago prior to COVID. It will change dramatically, and somebody has to lead us through all this. That person's me.
Thank you. Candidate Mullen?
So I'll actually answer the question. My top 3 things that I can control as mayor of Lisle is to create a thriving downtown, to redevelop the Ogden corridor in a way that we all can enjoy it and it attracts people from other communities, and that we have a comprehensive flood mitigation strategy that's fully implemented. Those are the three most important things to me.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with candidate Mullen. Outside of your time elected at the village, what skills and experience do you bring to the office of mayor?
So as I mentioned before, I was elected previously as Lisle Township Supervisor, in which I was the chair of the board there, as well as the chief elected official over the supervisor's office. So I've managed the staff, I executed services, and we did a lot of work to improve the programs that we had. I also, because of my stormwater and floodplain background and as an engineer, I understand a lot of how municipalities work from an infrastructure standpoint. I've done a lot of work on tollway work, I've done work for ComEd, I've done a lot of infrastructure work over my career, and I understand what goes into it from our side and can help bring that to the forefront as we need to, and ensure that we are continually improving upon our current infrastructure. As someone who has also been very involved in flood mitigation over her entire career, I think that bringing that experience and knowledge is really important. I have strong relationships still to this day within FEMA. I currently continue to do work for FEMA, including redesigning the community rating system program. The CRS is something Lisle participates in, the county participates in, and it provides incentives for people who are paying flood insurance, as long as us as the community continue to do more and go above and beyond the federal minimums. So I think having those relationships and understanding what goes into that is really important as well. And I'll just say I am a graduate of Notre Dame with a bachelor's in science of civil engineering. I have worked my whole career as an engineer, as a project manager. I'm certified PMP, as a continuous improvement expert, and as a facilitator. All of those are focused on solving problems. And that's, as mayor, I think the number one thing to do is to be the face and the relationship builder and solve the problems of our community.
Thank you. Candidate Pisak.
Thank you. I think what I bring to the role of mayor goes beyond just a single discipline. All the work that I've done, whether it's as a salesperson, as a project manager, ultimately has been to lead a business, to be responsible for the profit and loss of entities, of a project, of a business segment, and it takes all sorts of disciplines together, whether it's an architect, an engineer, a stormwater engineer. All disciplines have to come together under one umbrella, and that's what challenges me. That's what I thrive on, is those disciplines. I built some of the tallest buildings in Chicago. I did the largest vertical expansion on top of an existing building. I've done underground work. I understand the interoperability of all those disciplines and how one affects another. And in the end, it has to be done profitably, it has to be done realistically, and it has to be completed. That's what keeps me motivated. And I'm also a firm believer that I always learn by doing something myself the first time. And that gives me appreciation for others that do that same task. I'm not above or below any tasks, from sweeping a floor, emptying a garbage can, to hitting the ground running and meeting with CEOs and talking to developers. So that's what I bring.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question, we'll start with candidate Pisak. If you could change one thing in our zoning code, what would that be and why?
I think the biggest concern we have right now is with massage establishments. And we have to vet out a regulation. It affects legitimate operators. We get complaints from legitimate operators over non-legitimate operators. That is the biggest number one issue that we have to resolve. Secondary to that, Lisle historically had the opportunity to be the county seat. It didn't want the county seat. It passed it to Wheaton. Naperville fought for it, tried to steal it from Wheaton. Lisle's always wanted to keep small. But in keeping small, what's happened is we've jumped boundaries in Lisle. We had a residential area with businesses on the outside. Then we built another residential area and then businesses on the outside. Now we have incompatible zoning where we have industrial uses next to residential uses. We have to find solutions to those. We have to plan better for those. What will it look like in 10 or 20 years? That's the challenge in Lisle, is we've never been planned from day one. We've always expanded out, sometimes almost reluctantly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Mullen.
So I don't know if I can say anything very specific, because I think what we need is to look at the central business district regulations and take a look at where we want to be and make sure our zoning code is modernized specifically in that area to achieve our vision. So right now, there are things like you can't have apartments on the first floor. Well, that became an issue when we started talking about live-work units or how they are fronted on the Flaherty and Collins development. I think things like live-work units are a very interesting thing that aren't accounted for or enabled by our current zoning code. I think having these really unique niche ability for zoning in our downtown might help us attract small niche businesses that really kind of grow our reputation in Lisle and help people understand who we are. So things like live-work units, having an incubator or something like that for small businesses would be ideal for our downtown to really help attract micro businesses and really small businesses and help them prosper. But I don't think we really have anything that enables that currently or makes it really clear that that's something we'd be interested in. So it's things like that within the central business district that I'd like to take a good look at.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next question, we'll start with candidate Mullen. Regarding Lockformer, why not a car dealership, grocery store, or indoor pickleball courts?
Okay, sorry, so I wasn't sure if that was a question mark at the end or if there was a comma. Okay. Well, it's not our property, so we don't really get to decide exactly what happens there. We have to work with the owners of Lockformer, which is not easy, but really work with who comes forward and says, I'm interested in this property, I want to do something here. It's a large, expansive property that has a lot of opportunity in it, but clearly there are things you can't do there still. I think there's still a limitation on how deep you can dig in that property. So you need something that doesn't require like really going further down. I know some of the things that have come up in the past sounded really exciting and they just fell through for whatever reason. I don't know how strong of a stance we took with them, how much we really worked closely with them. I know the village manager has put a lot of time and effort, and some of the people have come forward and are interested in that property, but it has challenges, environmental challenges that remain. But I think if we can find the right developer who's interested in it and wants to bring something unique, we really can work with them to make it happen. I think the most interesting one was a company that did outdoor like large landscapes and patios and things like that. And so they wanted to almost have like an outdoor showroom, and it would really be a destination business, which I think that would be ideal for a large location like that right off of 355. And it would have attracted people from all over. But they just couldn't come to an agreement on the terms that they wanted. So there's definitely been interest over the years, and people have come forward and wanted to do something. It's just a struggle to make it all work. I'm interested in solving that.
Thank you. Candidate Pisak?
In response to the way that question was answered, we've had almost every one of those uses proposed on the Lockformer property. 8 years ago, we had Walker Athletics that wanted to repurpose the existing building, elevate the roof on it, and build basketball and volleyball and badminton courts inside there. The village board at the time denied the use and never went anywhere. We have had car dealers propose uses on there prior to COVID, a month before COVID, and then COVID hit, put the brakes on that project. That project somewhat publicized in answer to a resident that has asked a question most recently, is currently under contract with a developer. I'm not at liberty to give too many details, but that property is currently under contract. So there is, we've been working on this for the last 2 years, bringing somebody into it, but it is at their timeline, at their pace. And part of the East Gateway TIF effort is in preparation for this development, this developer who's currently under contract. So it's great news. It's a very challenging site. Westside Tractor was initially going to go there till their financing fell through and they looked for other property. Ground Effects that was mentioned, their bank told them, we will not lend on that property. So finding the right developer that can build on it. There have been soil borings done, tests done, progress has been made. Would we like it to go quicker? Absolutely, but we don't dictate those terms.
Thank you. Need my glasses for this one.
I did too.
Small print. This one will be for candidate Pisak first. How would you engage and collaborate with the Park District, Library District, Lisle 202, and the Township?
Well, 9 years ago, this was before I even had an inkling of running for mayor, we had a small group of people that met with the Park District. I've been told that I'm one of the only people that has an actual vision for Lisle. I believe we have a diamond in the rough in our Park District. I think we have something comparable to Ravinia of the western suburbs. I've actually made efforts. There was discussion of bringing the Chicago Symphony Orchestra to Lisle a number of years ago, 9-10 years ago. It's going to be in the Forest Preserve by Navistar. I'd like to bring something like that to the Park District, to the stage area and the hill. We have a larger area than Ravinia does, where our residential areas are farther away than Ravinia's are. Ravinia has homes directly adjacent to the property. We have a great opportunity. We have a train stop like Ravinia does, walkable distance to bring travelers from Chicago or even from the west, from Aurora. Aurora has a Riverside stage down there that everybody commutes down to. Oswego has had one for a while. I think that's defunct now. But we have a great opportunity. If we could just get a walkable path between downtown, Community Park, build that into a facility that is operable as a business. We had some fruitful conversations with some high caliber people, but things just didn't progress. But I see that as a real possibility. I also see maybe not quite eyes to the skies, but I see the largest fireworks display in 2026 in the state being in Lisle.
Thank you.
And moving from there.
Thank you.
Could you
And
just repeat the question?
Oh, sure. Let me get my glasses again.
Sorry.
How would you engage and collaborate with the Park District, the Library District, Lisle 202, and the Township?
So, this is about engaging and collaborating, not telling them what to do. I have really strong relationships already with all those entities. I had the unique opportunity during COVID, the actual crisis that it was, that I got to have a weekly discussion and call with the executive directors of Park District, Library, as I was the township official, and then the superintendent of Lisle 202, as well as the village manager for Lisle, all participated in that. And we talked weekly, and it was invaluable for us to meet that frequently during a real time of crisis. It was actually Chief Creston from Lisle Woodridge Fire Department that kind of helped bring us together. And it helped us build strong relationships with each other. It helped us understand what each of us was going through, learn from each other, identify best practices, and continue moving forward within our offices so that we could best serve our public. I think something similar to that is still needed. There has been in the past, and I'm not sure if it's been continuing, an intergovernmental group that would meet, I believe, quarterly for a while. I think it would be great if we got together monthly, at least in a small form, and larger, maybe more strategic meetings quarterly. And that can be either elected and or like you're kind of like the your executive director, things like that, to talk about how do we do more together? How do we make our individual taxing bodies' dollars go farther? There's not perfect overlap between all of our boundaries, but when we work together, we do more. We get more accomplished. During COVID, one of the things we did to do together was the Park District hosted a movie night. It was like a little makeshift drive-in that we hosted at the right behind the Park District, and all of us were involved in it. We all advertised it. We gave a small amount of money for it, a couple $100s, and it was a really great community event.
Thank you. We'll start with candidate Pisak this time. Are there any grants you are interested in seeking for the village?
Any available grants are always sought after, particularly bike ped, infrastructure, stormwater, any of them that are available. There's none that should be off the table. We should be pursuing every one of them.
Thank you.
Simple answer.
Yeah, thank you. Candidate Mullen.
I agree that we need to be open to all grants. I think some of the specific ones that we really need to investigate that maybe are a little bit newer to us would be the mental health board grants availability. Like I said, having a social worker support our police could be funded through that. There's also a variety of transportation grants that I know we're really great about pursuing and identifying right now. But there's also evolving grant programs. FEMA's grant programs for floodplain mitigation are kind of constantly changing and evolving. So there's the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, which is available post-disaster, and it's available to any community, no matter where the disaster in Illinois happens also, that funding can be allocated to us. So we need to be really cognizant of when there are disasters happening throughout the state so we can access those funds. And then there's also more of a pre-disaster program called BRIC, B-R-I-C, from FEMA that is more of a competitive grant. They really want you to show up with something really cool for mitigation and something unique and really impactful. So I would really like us to try and identify a good grant for that and compete for that because you can get a significant amount of funding through the BRIC program.
Thank you. This would be for candidate Mullen first. Can the former Snow Valley property be turned into a natural area planted with pollinating plants that can withstand occasional flooding?
So, let's see. I would have to really look at it more carefully, and I think the staff would have to take a look at it. Is it feasible? Probably. Elevation-wise, it really depends on elevation there. Like, is it too perched to have any kind of impact on flooding? You can't have a stormwater basin or a floodplain basin that is perched up above the floodplain because you'd have to pump water into it, and that becomes very expensive and is a point of failure also. So as long as the elevation, and I just haven't studied the topology or topography in that area. But as long as the topography were to suit it, yeah, that's a great use for it if it's not being sold or not being redeveloped. I believe I had heard that there was occasional interest in that property, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I'll admit that I would have to dig into that a little bit more. What I like about that question too is that trying to reclaim some of the natural aspect of the floodplain and the natural ability of the floodplain and natural plants to kind of help improve our water quality as well is a really important part of that. If we were to turn that into a facility, you absolutely want to do something with natural plantings and do more that promotes water quality improvement in addition to just water quality, or sorry, water quantity. So doing that would really be beneficial from a variety of standpoints.
Thank you. Candidate Pisek.
There's a number of things that can happen with that property, none of which are ruled out as long as they're safe. One consideration that had been put forth is using that space to relocate the downtown firehouse to and creating a safety campus for the village police department with coupled with the Lisle Woodridge Fire District for a replacement firehouse. There may be other alternatives for that use, but that is a use that was that has been discussed. Natural restoration of a natural plain there to help with stormwater storage or with floodplain mitigation, I think is an excellent idea. And I think we have to look at all options as we look at the Route 53 corridor and the comprehensive land use plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll start with Candidate Pisek this time. What role should Lisle play in a regional transportation planning?
That's an interesting question because right now our regional transportation dollars that we get taxed on are being attacked by the Chicago CTA looking to take our funding. We have had bus routes that due to COVID downturns in the economy have stopped running, stopped servicing. I think that there's a greater opportunity for the Regional Transportation Authority, working in conjunction with them, setting up service specially tailored for Lisle. I know I get a lot of residents requesting that used to be able to pick up a bus and come to the commuter station on a daily basis, looking for that replacement service, but there's simply not enough volume at this time. To that end, though, Bank of America just announced 130,000 employees are returned to work 5 days a week. Federal government is returned to work 5 days a week. There will be more commuting downtown to Chicago. There'll be reverse commuting to Lisle, and we will have a need for public transportation growth and improvement. But we have to work, I think, with RTA, and we have to fight for our tax dollars to be spent in our community to achieve that goal.
Thank you. We'll start with Candidate Mullen.
I didn't get a chance to answer that question.
Oh my gosh, I'm so
It's
sorry.
okay.
Sorry. My apologies. Your 2 minutes.
No worries. So I do support being part of a regional transportation group. I think that whenever we can work with others, it helps us be more powerful in what we ask for and what we want, and helps us be able to collaborate in a way that makes our dollars go farther. Now, I agree, we don't want our money going to everyone else and not being able to get something for Lisle in the process. So I think participation in that has to just be really savvy in how we approach it. I do think also that when we have these regional opportunities, we need to make sure we are being active participants. Things like the DuPage Mayors and Managers are a great opportunity for us, and I would absolutely want to be participating personally in as much as I am able to, because I think it's important for the person who is the chief elected official to be the face, to be there, be talking to other mayors, other managers, other people with the same responsibilities, to fight for what we think we should have in Lisle, and to make sure that we understand where everyone else is heading so that we can stay on track and hopefully pull ahead of them.
Thank you. Now we're ready. Sorry about that. My apologies. This to candidate Mullen. To what extent could the pause or freeze on federal spending currently in place by the federal government impact Lisle?
So, my understanding is, the last thing I read before I left was that there was at least an injunction temporarily on the freeze, but all federal funding has been halted, and all of our federal grants are going to stop being paid out. So if there's any federal money that we have that we are seeking reimbursement for, until that freeze is lifted, we won't have access to those funds. So we're going to be in a position where we may have to be fronting that money and holding on to either bills or paying ahead before we can even hope to get reimbursement. So there may be a significant gap in when we get reimbursed for any grant work, which is kind of frightening because we do have a significant amount of grants currently, especially around in the transportation area. I'm personally currently in my work with FEMA, kind of struggling through some of this, trying to identify as executive orders are coming down, what we need to do to pivot, what we need to do to change. And I think what's most important right now is staying on top of it, understanding exactly where we are, having legal counsel advise us on what the exact impacts are that we need to expect, and then being adaptable and flexible so that we can make arrangements. We have the ability to pull money to do budget amendments if we need to, with the hopes that eventually that money comes through. But if it doesn't, now we're on the hook for some of these bills and projects that we've already going forward. So I think what's most important right now is just staying on top of it, understanding the legal ramifications, and knowing how we're going to react and stay as current with everything as we can. The last thing I want to do is leave a contractor in the wind.
Thank you. Candidate Pisek.
Thank you. I think that for the last 8 years, what I've strived for at the village is to be ahead of what's going on now at the federal level. We have become more lean. We have become more effective. We're doing more with less than we ever have before, and we've put ourselves in a financial position where we have doubled our treasury over the last 8 years and can weather a storm like this. We need to look for other opportunities. We need to be on top of these grants, be the first ones in there once they're released for payment to get back to normal. But we have the ability, despite a downturn, despite federal cutbacks, to be able to weather the storm due to preparations that we've made over the last 8 years. I think that becoming overly reliant on funding from outside our control has its risks, and I think anytime we can control our own funding and bring in our own revenue, we're all the better. We need to be able to support ourselves in the community without being detrimentally hurt by either the state or federal governments when they choose to do something that doesn't align with our needs. So, thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with candidate Pisek. Would you consider free public Wi-Fi access? How would you fund it?
I think, quite honestly, we're overserved with Wi-Fi. I don't know that we have any dead spots. Almost every router for every business, for every home, has a public component to it that's shared. We're inundated with 5G. There's people that would take the position of actually eliminating 5G. I don't know that I fall in that favor, but between all of my devices, all my cellular connections, I think to a large part we're over-connected. I don't know that whether a particular government building, a school, is short of any Wi-Fi connection, but I don't know that every public street needs to have a radio transmitter generating public Wi-Fi. I think there's many private options out there that fill the need.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Mullen?
So I would actually support free public Wi-Fi in municipal locations in specific areas. I don't think it's something that we blast out across the entire, community and people can, no matter where they are, pick up on it. I don't think that's really a realistic way of doing it, but the town of Normal does that currently, where all their municipal facilities, you can come in and access their Wi-Fi. And I think it's a matter of equity, which has very recently become a very dirty word. Equity is about making sure that people have equal opportunity. And one of the things that people do struggle with, especially those who, as we were discussing earlier, maybe need affordable housing and maybe down on their luck or struggling in some way, applying for a job, most of the time you need to submit everything electronically. Now, kids doing their schoolwork, they need access to Wi-Fi. And while schools will provide a laptop for them to take home typically, if they don't have access to Wi-Fi, they can't get on Google Classroom and do what they need to do. So I think just having another place that people can go, I know they can go to the library and use their facilities, making it more accessible, making it easier for people to have access to Wi-Fi just makes everything more equitable and allows our community and our residents to prosper and do well.
Thank you.
Do you want to ask one more time if anybody has questions?
We still have time for more questions, so if you do have any, if you want to fill out a card and raise your hand, we can take a couple more questions.
I dare you to ask our favorite color.
This question would be for candidate Mullen first. How do you plan to involve residents in the discussion-making process in our town?
So I touched on this a bit earlier when I talked about the work we did for the assessor's building and identifying what the path forward was there. I think not everything needs that extensive of work, but I think one of the things we currently have that we need to publicize more and leverage is our new portal system, where you can submit for permits, I can get my business license through there, all the things like that. And using that as a way of communication with the public, being able to take feedback, being able to do and work with it and have staff kind of say, here's what we've been hearing, here are things we can do with it. So anything from low key like that, just submitting feedback, getting that, and having an annual cycle where we review everything and go through the process of saying what do we need to pull, what do we need to improve upon, to larger decisions that need to be made warrant that larger facilitated meeting discussion. I also, when I was at FEMA, had the unique experience of getting mooned in a public meeting. It was quite interesting. But my job was to go out to communities and present them with new flood maps and show them where their flood risk was. And a lot of the public did not take kindly to being told, now you're going to have to buy flood insurance. Understandably. So we changed our process after that meeting of barely making it out with our lives. It felt like we had armed guards protecting us who told us afterwards, by the way, I agree with them. And this was like militia country in Michigan, where it was legitimately scary. We changed our whole approach for meetings. We no longer spoke to people and told them what we wanted to do and then hoped that they would tell us something back. It was a total open house format, and I think open houses are a really productive way to do that, where you have different stations to let people have individual conversations about the specific topics maybe they're interested in. So for that, I'm about to run out of time, we had all of FEMA's programs.
Thank you.
Would you please restate the question?
Absolutely. How do you plan to involve residents in the discussion-making process in our town?
Decision-making process?
I'm sorry, decision. I said
Okay, sorry.
discussion. My apologies.
I think that it's a rather simple solution. We have to be accessible to residents. We have to be inviting to our village meetings. I will never, ever restrict anybody's speech at the public podium for public comment. Everybody's welcome to come and voice whatever their concern is. My personal phone number is publicly accessible. Many people call me directly with their concerns. Village staff gets comments, concerns, action items. All of those are valid pathways towards resolution. We don't need to complicate it any further. It's just being available to people when they need communication. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that is it.
Okay, that is it for the question. No, do we have one
Was there
more?
one coming down?
I see more cards coming, right?
Okay. We have about 12 more minutes for questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Read this.
We'll start with Kenneth Pisek. When would you want to see the public art? Public art? And how would you make the art a reality?
1 second, please. 1 second, please.
I'll wait for the timer.
Yeah, having trouble, sorry. Okay. It pushed again. I apologize. New timer, please.
Kenneth Pisek.
Is it going?
Nope. I'm waiting for you.
Go ahead and start.
I think that art has a place in public, but I think we have to understand the wide variety of art, whether it's performing art, whether it's landscape art. The Arboretum just asked the village to participate in the rebuild of the tollway bridge and the artwork incorporated into that bridge. That was a several $100,000 project. The landscape of the clover leaves is artwork. Pathways, sidewalks, the downtown streetscape is artwork. Building facades are artwork. Building construction is artwork. We have artwork opportunities all over. I've actually solicited under other governmental bodies that have decommissioned artwork, asking for their artwork to be brought to Lisle. I appreciate art. I appreciate all different types of arts, though, and I think they all have a home in Lisle. We just have to find the right places for them.
Thank you. Kenneth Mullen.
So we have a public art committee that was established and enabled by the village board, and not much has happened other than a small installation that was here, I believe, here in the village hall. I would like to see a lot more happen with it, and I would like to see that as soon as possible. Just because something has some artistic flair or something unique does not mean that it's public art. I think what the people who are interested in public art and seeing this in our community are looking for are installations of some kind, whether it be a larger mural, art that is accessible, maybe, again, in collaboration with the Park District and the library. We've done things in the past like this where we can work together on it. I would like to see movement within the committee, a totally new membership of the committee of actual artists and artisans who can bring something to the table about what their experiences are and where they think good opportunities are, and create a installation that, first, something that can be permanent, something that can be long living within the community, but also something fun that is temporary. The same way we had the trolls at the Arboretum and Chicago had the cows years ago. I think Naperville does this periodically in their downtown. I think we can do the same, where we have local businesses decorate and have fun with the art installation, have kids involved, and really make it more of a community building event and have something that people can come, witness, enjoy together, as well as enjoy the experience of creating it together.
Thank you.
This ties right in with it.
Okay. We'll start with candidate Mullen. What historical figure do you admire and why?
Like this close to favorite color, right? No, that's really difficult. For me, it's a lot of people who, especially women, who have been the first to do something. What's top of mind right now, what pops up to me is Rosa Parks. Somebody who's willing to stand up and say, we're not doing this anymore, who will put themselves on the line to stand up for what's right and try and make progress for her community. I do enjoy just people being that pioneer, and she's top of mind because it was very recent, and my kids love watching YouTube, and we've been watching a lot of Weekend Update from Saturday Night Live lately, and there's a lot of stuff from there. But I do think that seeing her as a pioneer, somebody who fought for rights, a small, simple act made a huge difference in a movement. And I think anybody like that deserves all the respect in the world.
Thank you. Candidate Pizek.
Thank you. I'm going to go down a different road, and by roads, I mean Lisle roads. There are actually roads named after former presidents that I admire. We have Garfield, we have McKinley, we have Lincoln. All three of those presidents were assassinated. Our forefathers and foremothers before us decided it was important enough to name roads in Lisle after those presidents. I feel we're missing a road that would be Kennedy Street. Find a suitable street to name for John F. Kennedy. I've challenged the public on this to research those four individuals who were assassinated, and I've gotten answers. They were assassinated because they stood for sound money. They all fought centralized money, and they stood for. John F. Kennedy had his silver dollars. Lincoln had his greenbacks. McKinley fought for government-controlled money, not private money, and so did Garfield. And I admire the four of them. And we're seeing this in historic times now. I think we're going to see a return to sound money, which affects every single one of us, whether we have money or don't have money. It affects inflation, affects every single person. And until we get that straightened out, we're all going to be in a precarious, hurting situation. So those are my heroes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. This will be our last question of the evening. After this, you'll be able to do your 2-minute closing argument, or statements, sorry. Arguments. Okay, and we will start with candidate Pizek. Will you install parking meters or kiosks equivalent to the commuter parking lot? Am I reading that right?
Could we get clarification from who asked that question?
Install parking meter
Nope.
kiosks or equivalent. Kiosks
Kiosks or equivalent
or equivalent
for
commuter parking.
commuter parking. Okay.
I've been looking at options to do kiosks. I think after research, what we found is a cell phone-based app, pay by phone. to be the most easiest, least intrusive way of paying. You can pay on foot, you can pay as you walk to the train. You don't have to walk to a centralized kiosk and lengthen your trip. I think all options are on the table. I think committed quarterly parking is very valuable. I think monthly options, weekly options, daily options are all valuable. But the easiest way to make that happen is pay by phone.
Thank you.
So we did, sorry, I'll wait, okay. We did recently update our commuter parking fees and things like, and schedule. And I do think for that, the easiest way is always the best way. So whether it's a phone app or a stand where you log in essentially and pay electronically is the simplest way to do it. No more putting a folded up dollar bill into a little slot or anything like that. However, there is a lot of interest, I think, in keeping a close eye on what happens with commuter parking. And are we currently underutilizing the parking that we have? I understand some people believe that we're going to go fully back to work, but that trend hasn't come yet. So until it does, we have this empty space, and we need to closely monitor if that continues or not, and then really try to find a way to leverage that space differently. We can use it for, at least in off times. I think the moving of the French market to that in 2 years is going to be fantastic. And I think we can do more events and more use that space better in other ways also. So in terms of commuter parking, I can envision that it may get smaller if we don't see return to work happen the way people expect. And then we can do something else with that land. But for the area that remains commuter parking, I think the simplest, easiest access to it is the way to go.
Thank you. So each candidate will receive 2 minutes for their closing statements. We will go in alphabetical order. We will start with candidate Mullen.
Thank you. Lisle residents want to see change. We all want a thriving downtown and a whole community that can bring in businesses that our residents will enjoy and attract those from neighboring communities to visit us. We want our kids to be happy and safe in our schools, parks, libraries, and streets and sidewalks. We want our taxes to be reasonable and our tax dollars to be well managed. We want high-quality services, as we currently have with our public works, our development services, and our police department, and we want these services to continuously improve. We want Lisle to be our home and to stay our home as we age and our needs change, and for our kids to want to stay here and raise their families here someday. Tonight I've talked about what I have done and what my vision is for Lisle and the change that I believe most residents are hungry for. I want the same things that you want. And as a small business owner, a longtime public servant, the former vice president of a local firm in Lisle, and an expert in leadership and strategic planning, I know that I can lead us through and achieve this change. Tonight, I ask you, on or before April 1st, that you vote for Mary Jo Mullen for mayor of Lisle, along with all members of the Lisle Forward team. Tom Duffy, Christy Grau, and Christy McGovern for trustee, Ed McQuillan for clerk, Laura Paley for library trustee, and Jeff Pereira for Park District Commissioner. And if possible, vote early. April 1st will be in the middle of spring break this year, and don't let Election Day get away from you. Thank you so much for everyone for coming and for your time tonight.
Thank you. Candidate Pisek.
Thank you. I also ask for your vote, as well as your vote for current trustee Dan Greco as part of Lisle First. Adding to accomplishments from the opening statement, we maintained a record rate of quality development for properly motivated landowners and developers. We've had the largest capital development budget in history, bringing many new public works improvements within budget, and we've maintained public safety in the face of challenging social and political instigation. My opponent here has said it herself. Equity. Equity is not equality. Equity is a Marxist term. And Lisle Forward, from a Washington Times article, April 30th, 2012, I'll summarize some excerpts. The campaign apparently didn't look backwards into history when selecting its campaign slogan, Forward, a word with a long and rich association with European Marxism. Many communist and radical publications and entities throughout the 19th and 20th centuries had the name Forward or its foreign cognates. Wikipedia has an entire section called Forward, the generic name of socialist publications. The name Forward carries a special meaning in socialist political terminology. It has been frequently used as a name for socialist, communist, and other left-wing newspapers and publications, the online encyclopedia explains. The slogan Forward reflected the conviction of European Marxists and radicals that their movements reflected the march of history which would move forward past capitalism and into socialism and communism. Again, I ask that you support the Constitution. I support the Constitution, and I'm the only candidate up here that can take a vow to fulfill the U.S. and the Illinois Constitutions. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to take the opportunity to thank both candidates for being here, and on behalf of the Lisle Chamber, we thank you.
The Lisle Area Chamber is a nonpartisan and nonprofit organization. Visit lilechamber.com to view tonight's forum on YouTube. Also, look for chamber events in your town. Thank you very much to everyone here. Good night.
Thank you.